Awesome. Well, we are here again for another episode of FuzeBuzz. Thanks for coming in, Patricia. How's your day going?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. How long has it been since you wrapped up the program?
Last July. Yeah.
Okay. So, you know what? Before we dive into this,
Yes.
you want to give us a quick intro of, who you are, when you graduated, what you're doing now?
Yes. Okay. Or artist, not former artist. I don't know. I have an MFA in studio art, and I was tired of not making money, so I decided I was going to do something different. Eventually went into coding, looked at some other programs, found LearningFuze. I knew that this was a better environment that I could actually learn here, and people were really supportive, especially you. Like when I first met you, I actually really liked you. I was like, oh, this guy's answering all my questions.
Yes.
He's not like shady. I feel really good about this. Like you were actually a big selling point for me. I don't think I ever told you that.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
You were a
glad.
big selling point. And then Cody was huge.
Yeah. We're going to talk with Cody in a little bit here too.
Yeah. Never felt, being a girl in this industry, I don't think I realized how hard it was going to be because half of the time you are the only girl in the room. And with Stephanie, her and I talk about that a lot. Stephanie Nelson, who was in my cohort, who you're going to talk to. But, you don't realize how hard that kind of feeling of like, oh, there's 10 guys and I am the only girl. Like, this is a weird experience. So I felt like here at LearningFuze, I felt pretty good. Even when that happened. I always felt like my opinions I wasn't made to feel stupid because I was a girl or anything like that.
So before we go too far, is that something that you had kind of possibly felt beforehand in previous roles, or was that more of something that you were worried about coming into tech?
I think you hear a lot of those stories. I listen to a lot of all-female podcasts about women in tech or just women in the business world in general. I love Politico's Women Rule, and you hear these kinds of stories a lot. And I think things are changing definitely. And I think men are much more aware. Just people are much more aware of trying to be more sensitive to everyone. But
it's not even sensitive. It's just empathetic. It's kind of, hey, what are you going through? Can I put myself in your shoes? Because, I think when you throw the word sensitive around, it's like, why are you you don't have to bill everybody as sensitive.
No, I don't want to bill it as sensitive. Just more cognizant of the kind of language we use or the kind of jokes we make or the kind of, like talking about certain things, certain jokes. It's like, yeah, I don't really know if I want to get into that with, the guys I'm working with, right? It's like, yeah, you guys can just...
You guys can joke about it.
Yeah, you can go somewhere else and talk about that. I don't need to be here for that. So... Not that I want them to restrict their language. So
that was a little bit of your concern.
Yeah.
And
you guys were very great about that.
Awesome.
Because you've been pretty, even you inviting all female or like a bunch of female developers to come talk, like that is like one thing that I'm like, yeah, that's pretty awesome that TJ's doing that. Like bringing awareness to that.
Absolutely. We want to make sure, like you said, there's a huge gender gap. I think the last time that I heard something, especially maybe this is more applicable to Silicon Valley, but it's something like still in the single digits of percentage of female developers and engineers in Silicon. I think so. Now, don't quote me on that, but if somebody wants to look this up, send this in. I was really surprised because the conversation has been going on for a little while now. What's tough, of course, is going to be, it's not just going to be a quick flip of the switch, kind of thing. You're still, going to have to find people who are qualified to do the job. Now it's just more going to be removing a lot of those biases that what's crazy is how much of it is unconscious. As much as we would love to, and I talk to hiring managers all day, as much as we'd love to go into interviews and not think about how old is this person, you put a graduation date on your resume and we're human. You're going to try to do the math to say, oh, when did they graduate? How old are they? And that kind of stuff. Same thing with, females and males.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's great though that, your experience wasn't that and, you still felt comfortable because how was your experience going through a boot camp? There's a reason they call it a boot camp.
Oh, yeah. I think Stephanie and I talk a lot.
No worries.
We work together. So we were talking about this yesterday, and she's like, I think any decision or any sort of assumption I had made about people we were working with at the time or the boot camp in general, like you're just on this other plane of consciousness. You're just in this pressure cooker. So it's kind of like after you go through the program, and they're like, oh, wait, like this was a really stressful time. Like, I think we worked at least 6 days a week most of the time. We were here sometimes till 10, 11 o'clock at night. If you were going through a project, like, right? And you knew the people though that were really dedicated because they stayed. And then you also saw that when people got jobs like Martin, like John, like those kids who always helped everyone else in our program, and they got jobs first and they were amazing and they were hard workers.
Yeah.
And you kind of see that reflected kind of, not that I don't think everyone in my cohort worked hard. It's just there was different levels of commitment based on what you wanted to get out of it. And I had quit my whole life in Los Angeles, gave up everything to come to coding bootcamp, put myself into a little bit more debt just to do this. So there wasn't an option of, I can't get this done. That was never an option.
Yeah. How was that coming from what was a master's in fine arts? You're schmoozing and selling, millions of dollars worth of art. We talk. Is it like the movies?
I was more like moving, and I was more of like a registrar, logistics, like helping collectors.
Yeah. So no gunfights.
No gunfights.
Oh, okay. Shoot.
Like I worked with a lot of celebrities, like major collectors in museums and galleries. Like the Art Institute of Chicago was somebody that I worked with a lot. Like, so it was more along the lines of getting their work from one place to the other, and then helping them facilitate if they did sell. And then at night and on the weekends, I would make my work. I would go to gallery shows. I would, I had some shows. I had a studio practice.
So how did coding enter that kind of, enter your thought process of this is something I should look into, and then this is something not I should look into, but this is what I want to do? Yeah,
I actually had thought about going back to law school. I'm very
So we've hit
analytical.
fine arts, we've hit law, and now we're going to hit programming.
Yeah, I still want another master's or PhD eventually one day. But
got to get those letters.
Yeah, I want more letters. So I thought about going to law school, but all of my friends in law don't practice law, and none of them are making money. And I was kind of in this rut of like, I see all these collectors and all these other artists, like there's like 1% of artists that actually make a living off their work, right? And if you want to make more time for yourself to actually make work and do the things you like, you need more money. And I don't want to say that money is the central focus, but where is there going to be progress? Where is there always going to be jobs? And where the new job's going to be created, it's in tech. It's not in law, and it's not really in the art world. I mean, it's just the future, And it's sometimes a little scary, like if you listen to all the stuff China's doing, like all of their biometric data and keeping track of people and
social
all this
currency.
Stuff. Yeah, it's really creepy, right? And some of the jobs I've worked on, some of the proof of concepts, the amount of data tracking that we're doing, and data, taking in data from different things that you're like, I didn't even know that they could get this data from my smart device. It's interesting and a little scary, but I know that's where the world is moving. So I wanted to be a part of that.
Cool. Yeah. And then, so you started to look into it. What was your process?
Oh yeah. Treehouse was the first.
It's a great website too.
Yeah, it's not bad.
I don't know. I believe it's Ryan Folland who is the CEO.
I actually don't know.
You should. He is a great person to follow on LinkedIn because if you're talking about progress within the dev world, he is pushing so much for gender diversity and with bridging that gap. Ethnic diversity. It's awesome.
Oh yeah. Okay, I'll look him up. Thank you. But yeah, Treehouse was the first thing, and then I was like, I'm not going to get where I want to go if I don't.
I just remembered it's Ryan Carson, not Ryan Folland.
That's okay. An idiot. No, you're not an idiot. I'll look it up though. Thank you. But yeah, so Treehouse, and then I was like, I'm not going to get to that next level. So then I started looking at boot camps. I found another one. I did their pre-work.
Oh, really?
Not LearningFuze. Yeah. Not going to say their name because I don't want to bag on them, but I wasn't happy. So then that's when I started shopping. Yeah. And then I found you guys. So
what was it that was different? Because I'm obviously a little biased. I work here at oh snap! I still got the shirt on.
Yeah, you got your shirt.
Yeah. I work here. So all my experience is here at LearningFuze, and what obviously we've seen and what I've kind of, one of the reasons I joined was because of the fact that you're talking about a ridiculously supportive environment, teachers who are always available. So, I mean, what's going on at this other program that was missing?
I didn't feel like the instructors were, there was not an open door policy in terms of help. Like Cody has stayed, sat with me for hours when I was trying to figure out React Context API to make my final project work. Because I felt, we didn't implement Redux. We should have implemented Redux, blah, blah, blah. And then he sat there and helped me. I don't feel like the other program ever was going to do that for me. And I didn't feel that comfort level of, I can sit here with you to do that.
Yeah.
Like Andy, again, like another instructor, right? I need help, Andy. Even after I graduated.
It's kind of what you're paying for, which is, crazy to think that there's places that are kind of, not holding that or not, I guess, making that available where it's like, hey, ask us anything, anytime, because guess what? You've got 3 months to do this. I don't think anybody questions that 3 months is a crazy quick amount of time to do it.
Yeah.
And you're going to have a lot of needs.
But I just feel like they were like, why aren't you getting this?
Gotcha.
I never felt like Andy or Cody was like, why aren't you getting this?
Gotcha. Okay. So not so much they weren't available for help. It's just that the help wasn't as supportive, I guess, as it could have been. It was more of like you should know this kind of thing.
No, I think it was a combination.
Okay.
It really was like a lack of just support, structure, open door policy. Like this has a more, not collegial feel, but definitely more of this feels like a school. This feels like a learning environment. This feels like a safe place for all of those things. And I didn't ever feel like that other program felt like that. Yeah. And I do think that like coming from a place where I do work with a lot of junior developers too, a lot of them came out of other boot camps, and our Git practices, like all of those things, I feel like LearningFuze set us up better for teaching that kind of stuff. Like just the stuff that you wouldn't think about. Like a lot of the kids that I worked with, they didn't know Git.
That's surprising.
Like, or not a lot, but there was a few that just didn't know how to work with Git. And I was like, okay, this is like, you need to know version control. Yeah,
version control is kind of important, especially when you're working with a team and you're not, passing around a thumb drive. Yeah,
no, it was like, and, because the projects can be quick or sometimes you're a little more siloed, there wasn't this, like some of the projects didn't need it completely. So I think that was, and back end and front end work differently, but it was a little, I thought LearningFuze has prepared us a lot better than some of the other boot camp grads that I've worked with.
Awesome. So what are you doing right now? What are you doing at work? What kind of projects are you working on?
Yeah, I am a software developer for a company called Tensor IoT.
Cool. Ooh, Internet of Things?
Internet of Things, what? Yeah. So we work with AWS. That is our major, that's how our backend is built. Serverless architecture. The first project I got put on was an internal project, and my boss was like, figure out the front and back end. And so I built something with React, and then Lambda functions, DynamoDB, API Gateway, S3, and Cognito.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I was learning all of these things, and by no means was my stuff perfect, but I got it implemented. And it's a working application that we're still using.
That's cool.
So, I definitely have a lot more to learn.
Was that the application? I believe I was talking to Destiny about it. It's the internal, the applicant tracking.
Yeah, so nice. I built that. I had like a little bit of help here and there. Stephanie helped me a little. And then this other guy, Daniel, he's a backend developer. He's amazing at our company. He helped me eventually. So the backend was built with Node.js as opposed to Python, which is something we usually use more.
Interesting. Yeah.
So Python is like kind of the go-to language at our company in terms of backend. Almost no one is developing in any other language for backend. So,
gotcha.
Like,
have you touched much Python?
I haven't.
You haven't.
I can look at people's code and kind of know what's going on now, but definitely, like, that's something I want to learn. But
cool.
There's only so much time in the day.
Yeah. And what are your goals, for the future? Where do you see yourself? I know this is kind of like one of those cheesy interview questions. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I definitely want to be one of those developers that when you watch, it's like watching the Super Bowl, It's like when I watched Scott code, I was like watching Scott code, I was like, oh my God, like this is awesome. I definitely want to be more confident. I feel more confident in my skills. Like I can get a basic React app up going really quickly and get things rendered and debugging and all those things and connecting, the front end to the back end. We deal with data a lot, so I feel very confident in that. But I think being a more well-versed developer who can actually build the Webpack as opposed to just using the Webpack, like that would be a goal, like engineering those things.
Yeah, that would be fun.
But I don't know if that makes sense, but
some people are gonna click to it. It's gonna work with them. But what we can do too is, I guess maybe what would be if you could build anything? What would be your dream application?
I don't really have I'm not really one of those people who's like, I want to make my own app all the time. I don't really have that. I don't know where that comes from. Like, I love working on things and getting them working but I need that, like, here's my vision, like, help me achieve this.
Gotcha.
And I'm like, okay, like, tell me what you want to build. I'll build it. Like, let's do this. But I'm not like, oh, I want to make my app for this. Like, I always think about what I can.
So anybody listening should bring their visions to you.
Yeah, I just don't really have that thing where I'm like, this is what I want to build for myself. I'm usually more like, I'm using this app, this could be fixed, and this looks like crap. But yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so looking at other apps and maybe piecing things together if needed.
Yeah, I definitely want to be a senior engineer in the next 5 years. That would be nice. But
okay. Whether
or not I'll achieve senior in the next 5 years, maybe mid to senior.
It sounds like you're on a good trajectory.
Thank you.
So one of the goals for this podcast is to help people, or podcast vlog, I don't know what we're going to call it. Vlogcast. It's a vlogcast.
Vlad the Impaler?
Yes, if we are going Eastern European. Is to help people who are either getting ready for a boot camp or finishing up a boot camp, because there's a ton of different boot camps out there.
Yeah.
You've went through the decision-making process yourself, but then you also went through the job search process. And I think when a lot of people are thinking about boot camps, you Google it, is a coding boot camp worth it? And a lot of the articles that pop up that say no are usually because people had a really difficult time, whether it was in their job search or during their boot camp. So what advice would you give people who are either looking at boot camps and then maybe people who are currently in one and getting ready to graduate?
Yeah. I think you have to, when you're in the boot camp, you have to not feel guilty for saying no to things, because the focus should be on, I made sure I worked out a lot because that's kind of my release method, but you have to just say, like, I'm not going to worry about pleasing my friends right now, or all these phone calls, or like, you kind of have to put the social stuff maybe on hold a little bit.
Yep.
And, I got kind of lucky. I met my boyfriend in our boot camp. So,
Worked
that was
out
fun.
well.
But, for the most part, like, my social life was on hold and I didn't go to things as much. And I kind of let people know, like, this is my commitment right now and my focus. And people were pretty generally like, oh, you're putting a lot of money and time and effort into this, and pretty supportive of that. I think on the job front side, sometimes it really is the luck of the draw. I interviewed with somebody on the very same day at my company, and I got hired a month before them, and then they got hired the month later.
Yeah.
But we interviewed the same day. It was just the process. I went to a dev talk, like a Vincent dev talk at work in Irvine.
Great ones.
Met a guy. He was like, he heard me talking about front end stuff with somebody else who I was kind of interested in working for. And he's like, yeah, why don't you come in and interview? And I was like, oh, okay, sure. Set up an interview. He offered me the job the same day that I got offered a job at Tensor.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Two offers. That's epic.
But that was, that was a really networking, luck of the draw. He heard something. My boss really liked me at the time, thought I was really outgoing. It was like all these things like perfectly collided. And sometimes you just don't have that, and you have to be patient. And you sometimes get to the fourth round and you've had a 4 or 5 hour interview like I had in LA. And then you go home and you're like, okay, how did that go? It went like crap, obviously, because I didn't get the job. So you just don't know.
Yeah.
And you have to put yourself out there just again and again and be okay with rejection.
How did you deal with it? What was your, did you have kind of like a mantra or either a game plan or something? So for example, when you have these tough interviews, you're like, God, I don't know how can I keep doing this? This isn't for me. But how did you, and maybe it was, the support of Dan, but maybe there was something else that you can share.
No, I think honestly, for me, there's just no option of failure. There's no option of like, this is not going to work out, because this is plan A. Like, there is no plan B.
Yeah.
Like, you have to get to plan A. So it may not be perfect. It may not be the right role always, but you take the first thing. Like, I took the first thing that, one of the first things, and I'm really happy because you get that experience on your resume and now you look so much more attractive. And even if you stay or go, whatever you do, like, I'm gaining experience and I'm gaining more time. Like, people see my resume now and they're like, oh yeah, you've been doing this for
You're a developer.
Yeah, you're actually doing this and somebody's paying you. And that feels really good.
You're a professional.
I think for people who do get discouraged, I looked over somebody's resume recently that was in my coding bootcamp, and they haven't been hired yet. And like, I'm trying to be very supportive, and it's hard because it's like, well, what are you doing on your coding side? And what are you doing, like, committing to your GitHub? And are you going to things? And how active are you? And it's like, don't refresh the vocabulary. You just need to build something, because I really do feel like, even if my code is not perfect yet, and there's still things I could learn, like, I'm building all the time. So I'm still learning and progressing. And I think that's the hardest thing when you graduate, is like, just keep doing. Like, don't slack off. Don't give yourself time to forget, because you forget everything. So like Dan Pascal said, it leaks out of your brain just so quickly, and that's really true.
It does. Yeah. No, it's tough. It's always tough when we see people who have finished the program, they've put in 3 months and have been so focused, and then you get into this job search process and everything turns into like cruise control, or things slow down, like the traffic on the 405. So it's really important. Hey, if it's plan A, hop into the carpool lane, even if you're driving by yourself, but continue going 70 miles down the freeway.
Oh yeah. No, I just think you have to be really tough in this industry, because there is a lot of like, and coming out of boot camps, there's a little bit of bias against you, and the interview process and like the questions they ask you in interviews versus what you'd actually be doing. Like, the code challenges they give you in an interview are so not representative of the work you're going to be doing usually. And I posted on my LinkedIn, I'll have to find it and send it to you, but it was, somebody was talking about that. Like, basically I think actually Dan posted it too. The guy was talking about how the code challenges you get are not reflective of what the skill sets you need to looping through data, working with APIs, working with Corsairs, like building a React app, rebuilding things in Cloud9 and getting things to actually work, and VPNs, like all of this stuff is the stuff I'm working with, not some stupid math like challenge question. Like I don't freaking do any of that in my day-to-day stuff. So I think as an interviewee, you have to be cognizant that might not always match, and not to get down on yourself.
Yeah, but just keep pushing.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing too is a lot of, hiring managers have that in mind when you're doing these coding challenges. Is it's not going to be perfect. Let's see what we can, what you can do.
Yeah, and if they are a jerk, then it's probably not the right role.
Exactly. So. Probably not the right fit. Well, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
This has been a lot of fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
And bleep out that word.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, perfect.
Was it just one word?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Thank you.